Welcome back to the 2020 Meet Magento UK technical track. I hope you all enjoyed the comedian Danny Postal over lunch. Last year, we had our front-end lead, Shane Osborne, standing on the stage at the Mermaid talking about how to deliver production-ready PWA with Magento 2. After that talk, he said we were hiring someone to join us on that journey. Little did we know at the time that our next speaker was sitting in the audience. 1 year on, Drew is a big part of that journey at JH and is taken on the digital stage to talk about what PWA looks like 1 year on. I would like to introduce you to the only person that consistently outdresses me at JH. Please give a warm welcome to Drew Garratt on running production PWAs for performance and growth.
Thank you very much for the introduction, John. I do try. So I'm here to talk to you all about PWAs and what PWAs mean to us today. So one Meet Magento ago, I was working at a struggling e-commerce agency who was struggling with the transition from M1 to M2. Trapped in the past because what had worked for them before just didn't work anymore. And that might be more relatable now as we hit the transition from M1 to M2 and that M1 end of life. That was our day-to-day. Increasingly complex client requirements, along with muddled piles of modules, each with its own distinct and often conflicting front-end code. And page load speeds were becoming slower and slower. Template and module complexity was killing server performance. We were really struggling. So my idea back then, when we had all of these problems, was that we should just make the move to headless. We should separate concerns, focus back-end devs on serving data and integrations, and focus the front end on experiences and speed. And that's just what we'd started to do. And then I saw that JH were going to be speaking at Meet Magento about PWA. So got my ticket, took the train, and sat down in that talk, ready to hear about PWA. Pretty early on in that talk, there was this question: how many studios are mostly doing PWA? And I proudly upped my hand, but then I looked around me and I was shocked to see that I was one of only a handful of people who had put their hand up. I knew we were trying something new, but the advantages seemed really clear. And I couldn't quite believe that other people weren't on board. What became really clear to me over that next half hour of the talk was that JH weren't just on board, they'd already identified and fixed problems that I didn't even really know that I had. They were early adopters, and as such, they'd learned the hard way about some of these problems, but they were sharing those lessons learned back to the community. And so I made one of the scariest and sort of most natural moves in my career, and I went to work for JH. And now I'm working together with them and the rest of the front-end team to try and make PWA the default of everything that we do. Now, a small side note. While I moved over to JH to work on PWA, the studio that I had worked for, they went backwards. They started transitioning PWAs back to M2. This kind of paradox we've seen a lot. There's great promise and potential in this technology, but if you're not prepared for it, if you haven't learned the lessons of others and looked at the kind of great technical benefits and sold that into your client, then you run this risk too. If you have gone M2 to PWA and you've gone back, I urge you to try again, and I hope that we can persuade you to. So, back in time, 2 Meet Magentos ago, JH were talking about PWA, but they were talking about it as a technology that just wasn't ready. In fact, they were still talking about how Require.js could be used to optimize performance and how we could get those lighthouse scores up into the 80s. And you could even bring your default to load time down to 4 seconds on store. Now, one Meet Magento ago, JH knew that PWA wasn't just the future, it was something that they were using right now. But it didn't mean that it was for every client. There were provisos, things that you might not do. If a customer wanted heavy admin XML customization, then it might not be for them. But we've kind of got that counterpoint to that now. We have clients who we do this for regularly now, and it's about striking a balance, finding what they can live with their developer or their agency changing for them and what they can change themselves. It's really not a reason not to adopt. So nothing is impossible, not even third-party modules. We've done this time and time again for new PWAs now. Yes, if a module outputs front-end code, we're going to have to get in the way of that process and maybe rethink it. But clients who are looking for third-party modules doesn't mean that we have to say no. It's just the same as admin customization. It's about finding the compromise and finding the balance. So, circle back to 3 Meet Magentos later, me here in front of you all. Some of those fears that we had just 1 Meet Magento ago, we've allayed. We have 2 large-scale PWAs in production. We have a 3rd that we've assisted to launch, and we've got 2 more poised at the door with very different scales and complexities. And perhaps most importantly, if you asked us to make a regular M2 site for you now, we'd say no. PWA isn't just some fly-by-night technology. It's not bleeding edge. The headless approach isn't a pipe dream anymore. It's what Magento wants us to do. Eric this morning talked about that very thing. And we're all heading in this direction. So kind of why are we all heading in this direction? Well, PWA does different things for different people. What does it do for our clients? Speed. Now, we talk about this a lot. You've probably heard this a dozen talks. Maybe you've sat through talks where people have talked about this before, but I'm not just going to put up some Lighthouse scores, and I'm not just going to talk about sub 1 second page load speeds in the browser on my desktop. In fact, I'm not really going to rely on Lighthouse at all. Lighthouse scores, first and foremost, they're relative to the machine that you run them on. And because none of us are developing on 3-year-old smartphones, they aren't always a great measure of real-world performance. If you're looking for a quick thumbs up on Twitter, getting your 100, it can be useful. But 100 doesn't necessarily come from optimizing performance for users. It can just be achieved by hitting some development basics. You can serve a blank page with some nonsense text, and you can still get your 100. Now, I've been guilty of sharing these scores in the past, and to some extent, so has JH. Instead, I'm going to have a look at visual complete scores, or time to visual complete. This metric was recorded at webpagetest.org, captures video on page load, and inspects every frame, 10 frames per second, and then uses an algorithm to capture completeness. It's not quite the same as the core web vitals that Google are now talking about, but it's a really good measure of real-world performance because it's captured on real devices. That means that you aren't just getting a measure of how fast your site feels, it's real-world. It's not just DOM content loaded. And it's not on Wi-Fi, it's not on 4G, it's over 3G. Now, by way of admission, these tests do look pretty good when we run them on presentations. You can see Cellco on the right there, looking particularly shiny at 3.9. But all of these are PWAs, and all of them have great scores. Well, bar salons there are original M2 for comparison. Visual tests don't always tell the whole story, but tools like webpagetest.org offer more than just that skin deep analysis. Two sites might have very similar scores, but there are going to be differences. Total blocking time, for example, could be wildly different, and that can still have an effect on the user's ability to actually interact and use with the site. So PWAs versus the standard monolith, it's kind of an easy comparison. You can take a look at that 19.7 versus our Cellco's 3.9. And that separation has allowed us to look at performance and see what we can do to make it better. So we know that PWAs are quick. Our front-end build process allows us to load features on demand and to minimize the work the browser has to do and what the server has to deliver on that first load. In this short video taken from Cellco, we use the example of the search field. So the search field on Cellco doesn't load any of the code responsible for calling up our search API until not only you select the field, but you begin typing. All of that module code is kept away from the browser. It doesn't have to be downloaded or executed. Things like this allow us to really optimize that initial bundle and keep things incredibly small and quick. On the back end, we can analyze everything that is requested. We can minimize or heavily cache wherever possible. And it's important to say that none of what we're doing here is new or a new mindset. What speed is in PWA isn't the result of any sort of black magic or technical jargon. It's the same stuff we all do as developers. We're trying to do the minimal output and compute for the result. And we're just trying to make things smaller. So PWA doesn't have to mean complex. And it's really made the difference to our clients. Cellco hit 6 orders per second at one point on opening day, and we didn't have to worry. This wasn't something that was going to creak under the weight. The front end and back end were both doing their jobs, and because we built production from the beginning, we could see where more resource was needed and provide it if necessary. This is another big one for M2. I think all of us have worked with it for any length of time know that it can be a resource-hungry application, and how quickly a traffic spike can spell disaster for an unoptimized store. JH used to pride itself on being able to get people ready for Black Friday, but it's the new normal now. Every day is Black Friday. So the resource usage profile for our PWA applications are just not the same. With Magento acting as an API, the burden is significantly reduced, and we're able to scale that much better. Now, testing. So PWA has given us the opportunity to incorporate testing in right from the beginning. So from the moment we start construction of components, we start building tests. And then every pull request, every deploy, these tests are re-verified. This means that we cut down on mistakes and we keep them away from the client. And finally, iteration. So since Cellco gone live, we've pushed dozens of releases, from big bug fixes to whole features and, of course, updates for COVID. Decoupling has let us release smarter, but it's also let us build faster. We can build whole features in isolation front end first with dummy data, while the back-end developers puzzle out how to implement those data structures. And the result is the client sees us pushing more changes for their budget and allows us to make even more complex stores while remaining genuinely agile. Well, so the developer experience. You know what it does for clients. What does it do for developers? Well, testing and iteration, they're freebies for developers as far as the PWA developer experience is concerned. While the features are client-facing, they are just godsends for us. If you can keep building and verifying, you're not stuck. You're not having to battle with the monolith or play a game of whack-a-bug, hoping some change is going to come good. Magento 2 can be complex. The overlap of skill sets required, the deep understanding of the monolith, it can be intimidating even to senior developers. PWA has given us the opportunity to let our team focus on strengths. Less complexity. At JH, we have an internal app, an internal tool called Workflow 2. So it's a Docker environment, zero setup, shared between all of our developers. Our front-end PWA stack is still deployed in a typical front-end style, building with Webpack and Node. That means that our developers can test quickly against live staging and develop, but our backends can be spun up in a couple of minutes. But we've looked to integrate that tool with the PWA front end. So now that stack can be deployed together, allowing us to debug and develop GraphQL queries, debug Varnish, and all in an environment that mimics production. We continue to work towards the back-end developers and front-end developers kind of being able to play in each of the sandboxes. So although we've got this focus that people can work separately, we've still got tools that allow us to contribute to each other's work. The move to Headless for JH has improved the way that we all work. If you ask our devs, they wouldn't go back. And it's also probably worth noting that all of this has made our developers more ambitious. You can look at some of the PWAs and see standard e-commerce features, home, category, product, basket, order history, all the kind of normal stuff, right? But we've built apps and scales that go beyond this and deliver more complex features. Before it's kind of baked into M2, we're doing delivery on collection. We're doing reservation, we're doing real-time stock, we're doing project builders, kind of real business-to-business features. Our front-end team has had the freedom to tackle these problems, and it all feels easier. It all feels achievable. There are clear benefits to the PWA methodology, to Headless. We and our clients are experiencing them, and we wouldn't go back. But the success here isn't just about blindly embracing a technology. As you can see, we've been working on this for 3 Meet Magentos, and a lot of learning has gone into getting us here. Our focus from the beginning hasn't been about buzzwords or about being bleeding edge. We didn't just try it because it was the new thing. We've put outcomes first, and above all, we've had this focus on being production ready. So what are some of the things that mean production ready to us? SSR. So for us, building this platform means building it with server-side rendering. There's a real mileage from a performance point of view in just serving that empty div and then having your application come along and fill the content later. You can handle SEO with SEO Snap or other solutions, but we've always preferred to kind of stick to web basics. This ensures that if you turn off JavaScript on our sites, they still work. At their core, they're valid HTML. We're not reinventing how the web works. We're just making best use of all the technologies that we have in order to build sites today. Versioning. So having a way of deploying new versions for our application has been incredibly important. It's one of the things that I learned in that 30 minutes of Meet Magento a year ago. Having a service worker that checks for changes and only brings in those changes is incredible. It's a problem that JH solved, and it's still what's allowing us to make those changes in production PWAs easy. Okay, so yeah, I know it's 2020. If I thought we could kill it off, because it's a dinosaur, I really would. But being production ready means supporting IE11. Not having this support out of the box would mean drops of 2% in weekly sales for our clients. That's not something we can ignore as much as I might really want to. We aren't building themes, certainly at least not yet. If you're bringing over code into your application just for the purposes of scaffolding, you're not thinking about production. This approach might have cut mustard for backends, where all that kind of unused code could be either hidden away or pulled out in compilation. But in the front ends where we're pushing all these features, that's bandwidth and compilation time that we shouldn't be using. It is possible to do all of this stuff today, and we are doing it. We're not doing it with secret source. It's all current technology. But we wouldn't be JH if we weren't still trying to push things forward. That's why over the rest of the year, we'll be working to build sites that are even smaller, even faster, and why me and the rest of the front-end team are going to be sweating every kilobyte and absolutely celebrating every kilobyte we can save. Our journey over the next 2 PWA launches is where you'll start to see some of these improvements come in. So, what's next? Well, I'm actually going to start with one that's kind of already here. We've made the switch to using Preact in deployment rather than React. We've done this in Selco, and we will be doing this for all of our PWAs going forward. It's cut bundle sizes and it's improved performance. We're going to be moving away from Redux. So state management is always going to be a tricky part of what we do in front ends, and Redux is especially good for managing side effects through middleware. But for our own users, we're simplifying that model, trying to use idiomatic React patterns and just kind of simplifying things with React context. One of the big reasons that we're doing this is that we needed a way of on side effects and middleware system appending to the store, and we just couldn't find a way of doing that didn't feel hacky in Redux. We're also dropping the React router. So as we've changed the model of our application, routing has become one of the most important aspects of our application. We've needed a more tightly integrated solution that was supported through middleware. And this is similar to what other frameworks have been doing, like Next.js or Nuxt. And still, this isn't a move that is using any kind of wonder technology, anything secret. It's just standard React patterns being used as plainly as possible. Our goal is to keep fostering everything that has made the switch to PWA great, keep it production ready, and keep it simple, and keep that developer experience great so that it can benefit our clients. We adopted early. And all of this ability to suggest improvements, to look at ways of making things smaller, has come from doing that. It's come from starting that journey early to be able to step back and simplify. But you should be doing this, and you can do this. And hopefully all the lessons that we've learned and that Magento have learned, as they've been talking about PWA Studio this morning, will mean that you can get a leg up that we didn't get. PWA is just another way of doing the same thing we've always been doing. Faster, smaller, less data transfer. It's the logical next step, and it's utterly the right way to be building sites today. It offers improvements for sites for not just the people building them, but the people using them. And what's more, it gives us a chance to continue to improve, to be production ready. And there's still much to learn and much more that we can do. And even if you're starting today, the path is well trodden. You will get there infinitely faster than we did. We wouldn't build any other way. And I honestly believe that you shouldn't be either. So there's one more thing. So much like one Meet Magento ago, we are once again hiring. We're looking for talented front-end developers to join us on that journey, to help us continue to improve. And if you would like to get in touch with us after, we would be delighted to hear. So from me, thank you. And yeah, thank you to my front-end team, who I just couldn't have done any of this without.
Thank you, Drew. It's been an incredible journey. So we have some great questions in the Q&A that I want to try and rattle through. I'm just making sure I'm cautious of time. We should be fine. So the first one, someone couldn't resist asking how long it took to build Salco and what army of devs was used. Do you want to cover that one, or shall I cover it quickly?
To be honest, because I came in for the final stretch, I think you should probably be the one to let them know.
It was about 5 months, followed by a month of testing with, on average, about 4 to 5 developers. But some of that was adding a lot of new functionality in as well. So it wasn't atypical of a normal Magento 2 build, where you lose in some areas, you gain in others. So we were fighting with less front-end bugs and able to focus more on delivering the new functionality and new technical problems.
Yeah, being able to run through the front-end build over and over again with the full test suite coverage did mean that even as we were kind of making those last-minute adjustments and what we were looking to launch, we could just be really sure of what we had.
One's from Garratt James. Thanks for a great talk. You mentioned third-party modules. As a developer, what would you want and expect from third-party modules to provide to make it easier to implement them with your PWAs?
GraphQL coverage is the answer. I mean, we've had part of what Eric was saying this morning about the move to kind of 100% GraphQL coverage is the same thing that we can really benefit from modules. We need to move away from sessions and think about things in a RESTful way. And if everything that your module does can be replicated as a request in GraphQL, then we're going to have no trouble implementing it.
Next question. To communicate with Magento backend, do you use GraphQL?
Yes, we do. So we do have a mixture of GraphQL and REST requests at the moment, but we are moving, as Magento moves its coverage to 100% GraphQL, we're doing the same. We are in the process of making the switch to checkout coverage being GraphQL. In the first couple that we launched, that was kind of the area where we switched back to REST, where the coverage used to be better, but it's just not an issue anymore.
What front-end frameworks are you using in developing a PWA?
So we're just using React. Obviously, we're serving it at Preact and building down to it, but it is just React. We don't have a starter so much as we have mono repo, a kind of common set of functionality that we build against, and then we build each application as its own entity. So although we have some shared functionality and common points, it's just React.
David has asked, thanks for the talk. Very helpful. What alternatives are you considering instead of using Redux?
Well, so we're looking at using React Context rather than Redux. It's Shane's baby, our front-end lead, who's looking at kind of baking this into a system that we can roll out time and time again. But that feels like the natural fit at the moment, certainly for the way that we're handling data and state.
Yeah, definitely. It's worth us putting a shout out to the Magento team as well. Eric, James, and all of the GraphQL team are absolutely amazing. If you ever need any help or support, make sure you're in the community engineering chat. Reach out to them. They'll jump on Zoom calls with you. They've been doing incredible work over the past year, 2 years, and they want to engage with the community to help us move forward as much as they want the platform to move forward as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Drew. If anyone wants to know any more, please head over to the JH exhibit or get in touch with any of the JH team, like Drew and myself are available in the chat on Twitter and so on. It's been an amazing talk. It's been great to see you grow over the past year. We are back at 1:50 with Patrick McLean on Faster Magento, Cache with Magento. And as Drew's slide says, we're hiring if you want to get in touch. Please. Thank you very much and see you soon.
Thank you all again. Goodbye.